everyone, and welcome to the Creativators. I'm your host, Kathleen Johnson. This is where creativity meets activism, and we talk about social justice issues. We'll talk to everybody from painters, dancers, actors, and people really doing social justice work out there in the field, as well as academics and politicians. I hope you enjoy the many discussions we're going to have, and let's get started. Hello, everyone. My name is Kathleen Johnson, and I'm your host of the Creativators podcast. And today, my special guest is Ndidi Cascade. Ndidi is all-around creative, hip-hop pioneer, and local to Vancouver. And so very happy to have her in studio, and I will let you tell your story for our listeners and then get into what's coming up for you next.
Awesome.
So take it away.
Awesome. Yeah. So Ndidi Cascade, rap artist, educator, born and based in Vancouver, background Nigerian-Italian-Irish. My hip-hop story is really interesting because growing up in this part of the world, it's a really isolated place. And so growing up, we really craved Black culture and hip-hop. And for me, I really did suffer under quite a bit of racial discrimination growing up. And so when I discovered hip-hop, or when hip-hop discovered me, I just felt like a light inside of me turn on. And I felt like my self-esteem come through, and I found identity within that culture. I remember my first exposure was when I was maybe 7 years old, going down to Kitts Beach and seeing the breakers on linoleum spinning on their backs. And I was like, I want to do that. So dance was my first love. And then, watching Maestro Fresh West perform, being inspired by local groups, but I never ever thought that I could ever rap, but I love to write. I was a creative writer. So I'd write in a journal, I'd write poetry, creative stories, but I didn't realize I had a hip hop talent until I was in grade 6. And I discovered that I had some skills. And so I would just write for fun. And when I was in SFU, I, did my first show, and I wrote a 16-bar verse. I was really inspired by Wu-Tang at the time. And, I just spit that one verse, performed, and then the rest is history from there. I just started getting bookings. I'm like, okay, I better write more. I was part of the very first all-female hip-hop group in Vancouver called the Soul of Five Drops. And but I'm the only one that sort of kept going with the art. And now I'm really happy working in schools, teaching hip-hop to the next generation of youth, and just doing the school tours, my band's Metaphor and Originz, and also as a solo artist. Yeah, there's amazing. A lot more in there too, but that's just the general gist. Yes.
So I met you at a Black in BC event, and you were speaking, and I think you did some poetry, I want to say. Yeah, you did a poetry piece. So this art form takes many, many forms, as you know, like with hip hop, poetry, even spoken word's a little bit different than so. I from what the little bit that I do know, because I've just met you in the last little while, it doesn't seem like you place limits on what form that takes. Like, are there rules to your creativity that you do follow, or is it more of like a free form kind of thing for you?
That's such an interesting question, because that is what hip hop is all about. When it comes to hip hop art, you really study and you learn from those who came before you. But then it's also really important to create your own style or version of the art. And so for me, that's the only limit, is just making sure that I remain within the boundaries of hip hop style that's appropriate and respectful. But I really think it's important to be authentic. And so living in Vancouver is such an interesting perspective globally because we have the privilege of being able to look out into the world and pick and choose the kind of art or music we listen to, culture. And so, I've always been heavily inspired by what's happening around the globe. But the beauty also about living here is that we have the privilege also to feel safe enough to evolve within our own realms of creativity.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's such a unique perspective, honestly. And so, yeah, that's, I feel like my boundaries are unlimited, but at the same time, I also try to operate within that realm of respect for those who come before me. And this is what I teach the next generation as well. You follow the rules, you learn about the roots of hip hop, about the founders, those who come before you, but also really important to stay authentic within the art.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't, that's what they call it biting when it in the b-boy, b-girl culture. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So you talk about being mixed race, and I know you're not shy to talk about it. So when you talk about like a unique perspective, just being from the West Coast and whatnot, but you have other unique perspectives from your lived experience. I can really connect to that because I was growing up as one of the only Black kids anywhere at any given time in Calgary, Alberta, back in the day, which I did face a lot of discrimination as well. And I know it shaped me.
Mm-hmm.
And how did that experience impact you? And how do you carry that forward to maybe kids that you're speaking to that encounter that still today?
Mm-hmm. Racism trauma is real. And it manifests into all parts of one's life. And I realized that. I didn't realize, when things are happening in my world that are challenging, a lot of it originally comes from the racial abuse that I experienced growing up in this part of the world. Being a person of mixed race, I know what it's like to both be oppressed and also be privileged with my light skin. And so knowing that makes me realize, and experiencing that makes me realize how important it is to be an anti-racism ambassador. And so this is why I feel like, my position in hip hop education is not only to teach the next generation about the origins of hip hop, but also about how to become anti-racism ambassadors in their own communities. Because that's what shaped hip hop. Hip hop comes from a place of community empowerment. And, sometimes I'll create a song with a group of middle school boys and it's just all silly memes in the lyrics, and then you realize in that moment how important it is to do the work to, teach these kids about the original roots of the 4 elements of hip hop and how it comes from African-American, Latinx oppression and finding joy within those hardships. So that's what shapes hip hop. And I feel like, that's what shapes the hip hop arts. And that's also what shaped me. I feel like if it wasn't for the hip hop arts, I don't know where I would be today. Honestly, I do feel like it saved my life. It was not easy growing up in this part of the world. And so it's interesting because when I'm in a classroom or I'm in an assembly and I'm performing, when I ask the group, to volunteer to come up to perform or I noticed that a lot of the racialized kids, their hands don't go up. I could sense that they're hesitant. And to me, that says a lot. Like, it's like, I know that when I was growing up, I was hesitant. I was very hesitant living in this, white space. So for me, hip hop really empowered my soul. And I was able to operate and evolve into the artist that I am. So yeah, that's the lesson I try to pass on.
That's amazing. So how important, like you talked about the importance of it a little bit already, but I think a lot of us that are older that have been involved in or steeped in hip hop culture for decades can have some judgment.
Oh, yeah.
Of the younger generation and kind of like, I find I'm in grumpy old lady stage now where I'm like, oh, you don't know the roots of it. How receptive are your students to it? Like, when you're playing something from Tribe or Wu-Tang, who you've opened for, when you play them that, do they laugh? Does it sound funny to them, or are they like,
that's a great question.
Are they into it? Like, do they get it?
Yeah, I get a mixed. Sometimes they're into it. Sometimes they're like, well, this is old school. What I love is walking into a school and knowing that audience listens to, mostly Cardi B or that sort of like more pop, hip hop stuff. And then I throw down some bars and they're just sort of like in awe, like staring at me like, where is this coming from? Who is this person? How is this woman spitting these bars? And those are the magical moments. And I find that they actually do respect. So yeah, I think they can feel the realness of it. They can recognize the power of the hip hop roots.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So you talked about anti-racism education, and that's kind of my wheelhouse as well. And when I think I experienced a little culture shock coming out to BC, because I was coming from Toronto and Calgary, both cities that have a bigger community. And you speak of the importance of creating community. And do you find that challenging? Because I find like in Vancouver, there's not one spot where all the Black people are. Or I think earlier, even before the interview, we were talking about places to find that you can eat cultural food and things like that. Knowing that that's challenging, what are some of the things that you do to create community?
Well, like I mentioned, I was craving it so much because I felt like growing up, there was something missing in my life. And I would look at places like Toronto and watch Rap City and just dream about living in Toronto, just dream about having that cultural experience. And so my family, we opened a hip-hop clothing store called Concrete Jungle. And us and a few other community members in the Black community, we really fought hard to bring about the first urban radio station, which was the Beat 94.5, which didn't even last too long. So you could just see how isolated we are and how difficult it is to maintain this hip hop and Black culture here in Vancouver on the West Coast, which is just so isolated from anywhere in the world. It feels like being on the West Coast it's a challenge. When I arrive in Toronto, the first thing I do is I look for the best roti spot. When I go to New York, I look for the best Jamaican spot. Like it's, it is difficult here. And so it's like we crave it. And so this is why I travel. I travel a lot, just because I feel like I need to find that balance in my world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you do a great job, and it isn't easy. And I think we're both painfully aware of that.
Also, I think this hip hop education is super important in our schools in BC.
And it's such a great way to teach kids and adults.
100%.
I'm doing it with adults in corporate spaces, where I'm trying to inject creativity as a vehicle of learning. I think it increases retention and what you learn. I think it increases connection. It drops barriers. I think we were talking with Mocha Only about how, like before, how it drops ego. Like it just, when you are, like I do a lot with improv, for instance, with a team, and you see everybody like, oh, I can be silly. I can be goofy right now. And that experience is bonding, and people remember that. So they might not remember everything you taught them, but they'll remember that they had this really cool experience. And that stays with people. The feeling stays, it lingers. And music has that capability because it doesn't leave us. I think of like, I wanted to ask you about a song in closing here. I wanted to ask you about that one song where you remember exactly what you were doing. You remember how you felt, and I don't know if you can think about that right off the top of your head right now, but what meaning and where does that song where does it take you back to?
I mean, there are a few songs, but I feel like I want to talk about, Audio 2 Top Billin', just because that was on a mixtape, like an actual cassette tape that I received in my hands when I was probably 9 years old. And I only had access to radio and what was on TV. And I had this tape in my hands, and it was a mixtape from New York. And my neighbors are older, from Jamaica, or they're Caribbean neighbors, and the older boys, they would get these mixtapes. And so they handed me this mixtape. It was handwritten on it. And I just remember popping it in and just being like, what is this music? This is actually like New York hip hop that I've never heard before in my young ears. And so I think in that moment, I was like, this is incredible. Like the rhythm. And I just wanted to dance. Dance was my first love. And I just remember saving up, my money to grab the Queen Latifah Ladies First album, All Hail the Queen. And I was just like, there's these key moments in my life, walking into
song.
Radio Shack. You remember Radio Shack?
Yes.
They had those concert mate, like 500s, like keyboards like this. And I just remember just being there. It was like plugged in, and like the sample, like I think you'd use, and I'd just be like on the demo, just playing and sampling, and just, they're like, kid, get out of here. You can't be in here like all day. And I'm just like, hold on. Just those moments. Like I was just so obsessed with hip hop as a kid, but I never thought that I could ever actually do it. I just did it for fun. And did it also for my mental health. Like I love to, use this form of expression, just take my thoughts out. And this is what I teach the kids too. It's like, whether it's like writing raps or producing a beat or just moving your body to a rhythm, it's a healing art. So yeah, there's a few key moments. And, I could talk all day with you about some of these moments. And matter of fact, I feel like I should write about it, maybe like talk about it further, because there's some key, incredible moments that really push me towards where I am today. And even like the Wu-Tang thing, like, I don't know if I mentioned this before, but, writing that first 16-bar verse and then, being asked to open for Wu-Tang in 2019, that was kind of like a dream. I was like, how did I get this far? Like there's something, magical about this work that I do. And I was in theater. Like this was like, theater was my jam. I, thought I was going to be an actor or a filmmaker, but I just had these messages pouring through me, and I was able to write them down in rhyme and rhythm and perform them. And I'm like, maybe I have a message for the world in some way. And so this is exactly why I do what I do. And if I can pass it on to the next generation, this is exactly what I'm going to do. And this is what I enjoy doing. It's my passion. I feel honored. I feel hip hop is a sacred art, And I appreciate the work that you do, interviewing me so I could share my story. Yeah. And I know we're short and sweet today, but I definitely hope to come back to share a bit more with y'all.
We definitely will do a part 2.
100%.
And,
and I know we had some historic figures in the building today.
Yes.
Like Prev and Mocha. Interestingly, they inspired me to freestyle when I was younger. Like I was an emerging, I guess you say emerging rap artist, but not even. I was kind of like just loving hip hop and a listener. And I just hang with them and watch them freestyle. And I was like, I want to do that one day. So it was so cool to see them in the studio today. And then, Chocolate repping Toronto, and big up the Rascals. Rascals really inspired me growing up.
Yes. I would love to get them in here.
Let's do it. Yeah, let's do it. 100%.
Awesome. So what's new? Anything you want to mention?
Yes. So Black Music Month is coming up. So that's the end of June. So please come through. I'm doing some curating once again for Black Music Month, and also throwing an event on June 20th during World Cup. It's going to be at Nona's. I'm going to be featuring Vancouver's best hip-hop talent and some people from out of town too, special guests. So it'll just be a awesome, positive vibe. Shout out to LT Irie. Shout out to Palisades J. We got, school tours happening. We're playing also at Surrey Fusion Fest, July 19th. So my school show, Originz, we're doing a public showing of that. So definitely come through for that. Yeah, check me out on ndidicascade.ca if you want to book us for a school show or an artist residency. You can do that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And we'll have all of Ndidi's information in the show notes so you know where to find her.
Amazing.
And thank you so much for coming and sitting in studio with us today.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah. Keep up the good work. Awesome. Yay.
Thanks for joining us. And if you liked that episode, please like, comment, subscribe, and share. And feel free to pick up my book, Thinking Outside the Boardroom, Creative Solutions in Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Anti-Racism, available on Amazon and everywhere else books are sold.